Hey friends, once again welcome to my own law coaching classes. This is Advocate Preeti Patwa with you once again with our third question of the Indian Constitution. And the third question we are going to deal is the silent features of the Indian Constitution. When our constitution was made, the chairman of drafting committee of the constitution, as you are aware, was the Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and he said that our constitution framers has included the best feature of the other constitution in our constitution to solve the problems and the needs of our country. Friends, the framers of our constitution selected the valuable features of the other constitution and put them with necessary modifications in our constitution according to the needs of India and Indian people. Constitution framers of India never thought of having the original constitution actually. Rather, they always wanted to have a good and workable constitution. And actually, from last 70 years, our constitution actually have worked satisfactorily. Before going to the features of the Indian Constitution, we'll put one look over the Constitution of India. As you are aware, Constitution of India is enacted on 26th of November 1949 and it came into force. Implementation date is the 26th of January 1950, and that's why this day 26th of January 1950 is considered as the Republic Day of India. Originally, our constitution was consisted of the 395 articles, 8 schedules and 22 parts. At present, according to the data of 2020, that is 2020, Indian constitution is consisted of the 448 articles, 25 parts, 12 schedules and 104 amendment in the constitution. Friends, Constitution of India is considered as the supreme law of India and no other law in India can be against the Constitution or can be inconsistent with the Constitution. Constitution of India is a broad outline of the political principles, structure, procedure, power, duties of the government, even fundamental rights, directive principles, fundamental duties, these all are included in the Constitution of India and in detail we'll deal following salient features of the Indian Constitution. The very first feature of the Indian Constitution is the outstanding preamble, which is the mirror of entire Constitution, friends. We found the basic idea about what is written in the Constitution in the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Justice Subbarao, in the case of Golaknath versus State of Punjab, actually stated while talking about the preamble that the preamble of Indian Constitution is a preface of the Constitution. It describes source, nature, ideology, goal, objective of the Constitution. Friends, when we read any book, there is an introduction to the book, there is a preface to the book. From that we come to know what will be that book about. In the same way, preamble is a preface. It's an introduction of the Constitution which tells us the details about the Constitution. Preamble describes the India to be sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic and underline the objective of the Indian Constitution which is social, economic and political justice, equality, fraternity and dignity to the Indian citizens, friends. So, first outstanding feature of the Indian Constitution is the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Now, friends, see, there are two types of a constitution. One is a written constitution and another is a unwritten constitution. Now, the constitution of the Britain is an unwritten constitution and constitution of the America is an example of the written constitution. Indian constitution framers wanted to put everything in the black and white and that's why India's constitution is a written constitution. Again, third feature of the Indian constitution is that it is the longest constitution of the world. In the introduction, friends, as already in the introduction I have told you that India's constitution framers put everything in the detail and that's why there are 395 article, 8 schedule and 22 part in the Indian constitution. So it has become the lengthiest constitution of the world. Reason for becoming the constitution lengthy is that number one, the framers of Indian constitution put everything in detail. Number two, India did not have any constitution. So therefore, every details about the state, their powers are also put out into the constitution. So it has become the lengthiest constitution. Then many provisions of the Government of India Act are also included in the constitution. That's why also it become the lengthy. Then, as you are aware, India is the country of the diversity. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai मिल रहते जो भाई भाई. India is the country of different language, different caste, different race, different religion, etc. And to solve the problem and interest of the different group, details are put out into the Indian Constitution, and that's why it has become the lengthiest constitution. Again, friends, the good features of the other constitution are included in the Indian Constitution, like Bill of Rights from American Constitution, parliamentary system of government from the British Constitution. So, Indian Constitution has become lengthy one. Friends, there are two types of amendments. One, amendment of the constitution can be done easily, and the another amendment procedure is a rigid, difficult. American constitution is a rigid constitution. Amending a constitution in India is not a easy, but British constitution being unwritten is a very flexible, easy to change. But our Indian constitution is actually a blend of the two. This is partly rigid and partly flexible, and there we found that some of the provisions of the Indian Constitution as per Article 368 of the Indian Constitution can be easily amended with the majority of both the houses of the Parliament. But there are certain provisions in the Indian Constitution which need to be amended after passing in the both houses of the Parliament. Ratification of the more than 50% of the state is required, and that provisions are difficult to amend, and that's why our Indian Constitution is a blend of the two. Some provisions easily amendable, partly flexible, and some provisions difficult to amend, that is partly rigid. The next feature of the Indian Constitution comes, friends, is the parliamentary democracy. There are two types of government. One is the presidential form of government, another is the parliamentary form of government. India is having parliamentary form of a government. In India, the Council of Ministers, that is executive, is responsible to the Lok Sabha. The government in which executive is answerable to the legislative parliament, that government is considered as a parliamentary form of government, and we have the parliamentary form of government, whereas in United States of America there is a presidential form of government. Then see, this is another very important and classic feature of the Indian Constitution, that we are having the federal government. Now what is meant by the federal government? That federal government means a government in which there are dual government, two government, one government for the center and another government for the state, and both the government are individual, both the government are sovereign. They did not derive the power from each other, both derive the power from the constitution. That type of government is called as the federal government. But see friends, in Indian constitution there are certain provisions which put out that India is a federal government, like a dual government we have. It's an example of the federalism. We have the separate executive and legislative for the state. We have a separate executive and legislative for the nation. There also we found that there is a federal government. We have a written constitution. It is also a feature of the federalism. We have the supremacy of the constitution, that is also feature of the federalism. But at the same time, see friends, the name of India is a union of India. So our base is a unitary base. We have only one citizenship, that is citizenship of India. We have only one constitution, that is constitution of India. We have only one Supreme Court, that is Supreme Court of India. Even during the period of the emergency also, this federal form of government will lost its importance, and India will become the unitary government during that particular period. All the power will vest into the central during the emergency. So friends, there are certain features in the Indian Constitution which make it federal, and there are certain features which make it unitary. So Indian Constitution in all we can call as a quasi-federal and quasi-unitary. Again friends, we found that Fundamental rights is another important feature of the Indian Constitution. There is a separate part in the Indian Constitution to deal with the fundamental rights. That part 3 of the Indian Constitution from Article 12 to Article 35 actually deal with the fundamental rights. Now, 6 fundamental rights basically Indian Constitution has provided us. Among that 6 fundamental rights, the first fundamental right is right to equality, which is included from Article 14 to 18 of the Constitution. The second is the right to freedom. 6 freedoms was given by the Indian Constitution in the Article 19 of the Constitution, like freedom of speech and expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of residence, and freedom of a trade, occupation, business to the Indian citizens. Then see, we have right against exploitation, which is found in the Article 23 and 24. We have freedom of religion and freedom of expression, worship, that is found in Article 25 to 28 of the Constitution. Then Article 29 to 30 of the Constitution put out the rights of minorities, that is cultural rights and educational rights. And then if these all rights are violated, we have one very important right, that is we can move to the Supreme Court or High Court with writs, and that writ of Supreme Court is put out into the Article 32 of the Constitution. So friends, these 6 fundamental freedoms which are given, fundamental right which are given to the Indian Constitution, given by Indian Constitution to the citizen, is a very important aspect. Then see, when India's Constitution was framed, India's economic condition was not that much that we can give the many free or easy accessible things to the people, and that's why the framers of Constitution has put out a different chapter in the Indian Constitution, and that was part 4 of the Indian Constitution, which deal with the directive principles of the state policy. See friends, from the name itself, directive principles of the state policy means when Constitution was made, the framers of Constitution has put out that a direction to the state in future to make their policies. These directive principles of the Indian Constitution are found in the Article 36 to 51 of the Indian Constitution. These are not enforceable in the court of law. These are not justifiable. But see, still the importance of directive principles cannot be ignored. We can have a look over 1 or 2 of the example of directive principles. That is, one of the directive principles says there should not be a concentration of a wealth. Another directive principle says that men and women who are working equal, they should be paid equally for that particular equal work. In a Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, friends, Supreme Court stated that even though fundamental rights are having the primacy over DPSP, but still directive principles of the state policy are also important for building the welfare state. Then next one, friends, there is a separation of power in India with executive, legislative and judiciary with the different branches. Out of that, our Indian judiciary is an independent judiciary. It is an integrated judiciary. At the apex of the hierarchy, there is the Supreme Court. In the every state, there is a highest court which is considered as the High Court, and after the High Court, there will be a Supreme Court, and below the High Court, there are a lower court located at a district level, like a district court, civil judge junior division, civil judge senior division, etc. See friends, we said that our constitution is a supreme, so it's very necessary to check out that neither of the organ of the government is acting against the constitution, and to check that whether all the act of the executive, legislative and judiciary are in accordance with the constitution, the judiciary, Supreme Court of India, is vested with a very important power of the judicial review. Now, what this power of the judicial review means that the Supreme Court and High Court have a power to declare the act of the legislator and the actions of the executive as a void if they are inconsistent with the constitution. If executive or legislative is doing anything which is inconsistent with the constitution, that can be declared as a void. Then see friends, we have a universal franchisee, that is one who has completed the age of the 18 year is eligible to the vote irrespective of his race, religion, caste, male, female, no discrimination will be made. Previously, the age of majority was 21 for voting, but now it has made 18 year of age. So at present, universal franchise is that those who have completed the age of 18 years, irrespective of the race, religion, caste, or male-female category, they will be eligible to the vote. This means universal franchise. Then see friends, 42nd Amendment of the Indian Constitution added one word in the Indian Constitution, and that was secularism. Secular. India is a secular country. Secular means that we treat all the religion equally. Every religion is having the same place. In the case of S.R. Bommai, Supreme Court has stated that in India there are several religion people living together and each individual has a fundamental right to profess the religion of his life. And for that there are Article 25 to 28 in the Indian Constitution which give the right to religion to the citizens. Then friends, already we have discussed that even though we are a federal, but still unlike the United States of America, we have only single citizenship. In America, there is a double citizenship, but in India, there is only one citizenship, and I am a citizen of India. I am not a citizen of Maharashtra. So in India, one citizenship is there in India. Now, the next important feature of the Indian Constitution, friends, is the fundamental duties. When originally the Constitution was made, fundamental duty chapter was not there in the Constitution. But again, 42nd Amendment Act 1976 inserted the Part 4A in the Indian Constitution. And this Part 4A is the important part with the fundamental duties. Friends, originally there was only 10 duties in the Indian Constitution. But another 11th duty was added by the 2002 amendment, 86th amendment of the Constitution, and that was right to education was added by this particular amendment. So at present there are 11 fundamental duties added by Article 51A of the Constitution in the Part 4A of the Constitution. Then see friends, India is a welfare state. Welfare state means India provide the developments to the weaker sections of a society. There are various provisions in the Indian Constitution for improving the conditions of a woman, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, etc. So India is considered as a welfare state. Then government of people, by people, for people. That is democratic system. India is a country of the democratic values. All elections from the Gram Panchayat to the Parliament are held according to the democratic method in India. So we follow the democratic system in India, and this is another important feature of the Indian Constitution. Friends, then there is a rule of a law in India. Dice's concept of the rule of law is included in the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, and according to it, law is a supreme, law is a important, and everybody, all are equal before the law. This principle of equality is enshrined in the Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. Then, as I already told you, there is a separation of power in India. Montesquieu's doctrine of separation of power is adopted theoretically in Indian government, and there are three separate organs of the government in India: legislative who makes the laws, executive who implement the laws, and judiciary who interpret the laws. So for work of government, there are three organs of the government, and there is a separation of the power between the government. Hence, friends, we can say that Indian Constitution has become a distinct and unique features. Dr. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee, again said that considering the problem and the need of the Indian country, we have prepared a workable, good condition which will be able to solve the problems and the needs of our country. Okay, friends, this is all about features of the Indian Constitution. Again, we will meet in our next lecture with new point, that is nature of the Indian Constitution. Thank you.